Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I want to talk about skill-based damage, which is the spiciest topic in the Call of Duty community right now, even though that topic should be Black Ops 7, which recently released its reveal teaser. I could have done a breakdown on that, I could have talked all about it, but the topic that was more interesting to me, embarrassingly, was skill-based damage. So today we're going to have gameplay from base multiplayer all around. I haven't played regular multiplayer over Warzone in a while, but the story on this one is that a data miner, and a reliable data miner at that, managed to find strings of code in the most recent update that say skill-based damage ratio bot to human, and then there's an option to put some number in there for a scalar. This sounds suspiciously like the skill-based damage that the Call of Duty community conspiracy theory has been going on and on about for years, where you know, people blow you up in 2 shots and it takes 20 for you to kill somebody and your bullets disappear. And with skill-based matchmaking and engagement-based matchmaking, people have moved that over to even matchmaking changing the damage on your weapons. But the code does appear to be in the game, and it gives much more evidence and credence to that particular theory. So today I'm briefly going to explain what was found in the game, a quick backstory on what was found in the past, some community thoughts, and then my own scientific proposal for moving forward. And I feel like this story is a little bit more important than Black Ops 7 because that's a trailer. It's sort of this the story, the hype, reveal. This is something that actually affects your day-to-day gameplay, and it's systems that will be in place for years to come, so it's better that we understand them now. So yes, reliable data miners seem to have found code that says skill-based damage ratio bot to human. And I personally think it's very ironic that the developers would use the community name for this feature because skill-based damage is intended to be sort of a pejorative or slur. I don't know why the developers would pick that name for the variable. It does appear to have the ability to alter damage ratios between players and bots. This most likely means that bots are going to deal less damage to players that are of a lower skill level and higher damage to players of a higher skill level. So there would be some sort of sliding scale to determine how much damage the bots can deal. I would be surprised if the bots actually go over 100% damage when fighting real people. I would find it a bizarre design that the bots are like beep boop boop, high skill level detected, double damage activated, and just go melt people. I feel like that would be easier to notice, but it's very believable to me that the casual bots, when engaging against a very casual player, might have half damage or 75% damage or something like that. One thing that is very important to note in this section is that this string of code, to the best of everybody's ability to be able to tell, only appears to affect bot and player interaction. It does not appear to affect player-on-player interaction, and nobody has found evidence of it doing so either in code or in-game performance. But there's a lot more takeaways here after I take a short break to give a little shout out to Logitech G and their amazing G522 headset that I used while getting all of the gameplay for this video. I've just decided to make that my main headset for the bed PC. I think it's low cost, lightweight, great form factor, good performance. I've been very happy with it. If you're interested, there's a review linked below, a link directly to the product, and code Drifter will save you 5% off. But moving along to the other takeaways, the key takeaway here is that the technology to alter damage based on skill level is basically already in place and could easily be implemented on human beings. From a coding standpoint, there's no reason they couldn't just get rid of the bot part of the equation and make it a player-to-player damage ratio, such that maybe the low-skill player deals more damage to the high-skill player, or the high-skill player deals less damage to the low-skill player. And this feeds directly into one of the many community theories about matchmaking regarding engagement and engagement-optimized matchmaking, which we've also talked about. Over the last decade, I've been pretty adamantly opposed to various claims about both of these systems due to lack of evidence, which we'll talk about later, until, of course, I had discovered actual evidence of skill-based matchmaking and then updated my beliefs. The community has also been very interested in ancillary evidence such as the Skylanders loot box patents and various patents that Activision has for what will broadly grouped together as engagement-optimized matchmaking. The Skylanders patent, infamous 4 or 5 years ago, detailed a system of varying difficulty of enemies and matching players with other players such that they would be exposed to more desirable loot. They wanted a kid who hadn't spent any money on the game to get matched with a kid who had all the cool stuff so that they would develop FOMO and then decide to buy more of the items, thus increasing microtransaction sales. There's plenty of public patents on this you can read about if you want to. It's kind of a long and kind of a boring read. It's important to note that they were filed by an Activision subsidiary, and they seem to be designed for Skylanders instead of for Call of Duty. That doesn't mean that a system like this couldn't be implemented in Call of Duty, but just that does not appear to have been the system's original purpose. Subsequent testing by community members in Call of Duty games didn't really turn up anything interesting in regards to cosmetics affecting matchmaking. This is one that I was personally interested in. Weapon skins, camos, guns, whatever you had equipped seemed to have no effect on your damage or matchmaking. Also, being a person who has spent money versus who has not spent money didn't seem to show anything. And we even went so far as to open X number of loot crates immediately before matchmaking each time, and then comparing that to like a free player account, and it didn't seem to show any difference. So we don't have any quantifiable evidence of this happening, but we do know that there is a patent and at least an intention on paper. There are other systems in place that you can broadly comp into engagement-optimized matchmaking. The idea behind this is that matchmaking with players isn't entirely random, just like scrolling on TikTok isn't exactly random. If you're scrolling on TikTok or X or Instagram or any social media, what these platforms will do is feed you what it thinks will best keep you engaged on the platform or keep you there the longest. There may be other tertiary goals to increase sales or actions or things like that, but the big one is the increase engagement time. And what that means is that different people are going to get different things on their feed. It's not a true random. You know how algorithms work. Your friend's TikTok who's into trains is not going to look like your TikTok that's into horses. They're going to be feeding very different content there. But that's kind of what's going on in video games, but perhaps to a lesser extent because the equation's a little bit more complex than like-dislike. The fantasy of multiplayer matchmaking in a casual game is that it's still 2001 and we're matching with our friends randomly in Halo or COD lobbies on Xbox Live or whatever. And that hasn't been the case for most games in a long time, including Call of Duty. Call of Duty was actually kind of early to the putting more research and attention into their matchmaking algorithms than the base game, because they believe that would improve engagement, and it appears to have worked for them. The evidence that they've put out, albeit unpopular and maligned by the community, does seem to show that it increases engagement time or duration on the product. I don't know the specifics of all the systems that are in place and the good and bad things in what they do, but I do know that Call of Duty definitely has systems designed to keep you playing as long as possible. And that is beyond just skill matching and creating a fun match. And I want to also point out that every game company on the planet does this in some way, even if the algorithm manipulations are relatively small, again, just to keep you playing. This type of matchmaking is extremely unpopular in the Call of Duty community, and it's equally unpopular in the broader gaming community as well. Most people would prefer to be put in random lobbies online instead of a tailored experience. Unfortunately, the random lobbies haven't been true in a long time, at least for games that aren't independent. Small development studios are not going to have a budget to hire mathematicians to design sophisticated matchmaking algorithms, so theirs might be truly random. But at the end of the day, the customer doesn't like to think they're being manipulated into playing longer. And this is the part of the video where I have to point out that I personally have a huge problem with this topic. These always go over toxically and complicatedly because my approach to the problem has almost always been against the desires of the community. My individual version of proof is pretty much always going to be scientific testing, or at least some very convincing video evidence of something happening. Like, we have evidence of Bigfoot, just not evidence that holds up to scrutiny, and we have videos of Bigfoot, but not video that holds up to scrutiny, and a similar thing happens with skill-based damage. Unfortunately, a huge amount of the game strings are encrypted so that we can't see them, And a huge amount of the matchmaking happens completely off of your console and instead on Demonware's backend servers in the UK, so both are pretty much black boxes that we can't look into. It is the perfect thing to prevent anybody in the community from ever getting definitive answers about what's going on with their matchmaking. You can do what I did and design scientific tests and linear regressions until the end of time, or what Exclusive Ace is probably doing now and going through frame by frame of footage and counting things and looking for anomalies and checking with known things in the game and reference points. But in doing so, at best, you're only going to be able to study one or two variables with questionable controls because the live environment is so unpredictable. It's very difficult to prove that these type of things exist to my own personal standards because of the obfuscation of the encryption of the strings, and we know nothing about the back-end matchmaking. The same is true of skill-based damage. I watched Ace's video on that. He said that he was able to test this against bots in Warzone Casual, and if I'm not mistaken, hopefully I'm not totally wrong, was able to see that this is working between bot and player interactions. That's really happening. It lines up exactly with what the data miner found, so I would say that constitutes logical proof that skill-based damage exists between bots and players. The problem is that when you try to apply the same scientific test and video footage and scrutiny to player versus player in a live environment match, nothing interesting has been proven to happen yet. Thus far, everybody's been getting a null result every time. Nobody has sort of blown this one open, and that's kind of to be expected given the daunting task of reverse engineering super complex algorithms like that. And there have been tons of people that have tried this and failed, and tons of people that have come to me. The most common one is a video clip of a bad gunfight where it lagged or packet burst or something stupid just happened. One of the 87 stupid things that can happen in Call of Duty, and a person's bullet disappears or drops, and they're like, okay, that's proof that the algorithm is manipulating me mid-match. Unfortunately, those are things that can happen mid-match even without algorithmic manipulation. So skill-based damage between players does not yet meet my scientific level of requirement for proof of belief. I do not offer my belief willy-nilly like you have to earn that with me. It's almost like quantum skill-based damage. It exists until you try to observe it, and then it becomes unobservable and does something different, which is interesting because there's a corollary theory that this obfuscation happens on purpose, and that there's a team at Activision that puts deliberate work into making sure that Ace's scientific tests don't go very well. I do hope that members of the community take this seriously and develop some scientific tests to either prove or disprove that this is happening. That's kind of right up my alley. But let's be real, this is YouTube. Everybody's just going to spout their opinions with no evidence to back them up and make little clickbait videos like I did. So believe whatever you want, because I personally am not going to invest the hundreds of hours into work that it would take to develop a scientific test good enough to figure out what's going on here. My ability to care about this topic is nearly rock bottom, and if the community cares, I would support them in coming up with scientific tests that they can run on their own. If you have questions, you're welcome to reach out to me on social media, on X, on Blue Sky, on Discord, just YouTube comments. If you want to propose a test, go for it. I'll help you do it. I just won't do the work on it myself because it's mind-numbingly boring. Until then, I'm going to stubbornly stick with my belief that Call of Duty is not changing your damage based on your skill level, but the very moment that some bright lad in the community comes up with a solution to this problem and proves me wrong, up to that scientific standard of evidence, I'm going to update my beliefs when that happens. But until then, guys, that's all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.